Thank you for tuning into Culture Shock on Radio Korea. Yeah, this is a place where we openly discuss news and ideas you won't find on any other program.
To enlighten you,
Yes.
to give you new thoughts and ideas, and also learn about something that I guess you may never had a chance to hear.
Yep, and I am your host, Michael Wan, News Director for Radio Korea.
And my name is Young Kim. I'm the Contents Director. You are tuning into Culture Shock on Radio Korea at 7 p.m. on Pacific Standard Time until 8 p.m. and also 10 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. And please, we ask that you go ahead and subscribe and like and click that alarm button on our YouTube page. All right, joining us on Culture Shock today, the most special guest of all time. We have our CEO, Michael Kim, in the house.
Yes, Michael Kim in the house.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here with you guys.
You've been here before already with Douglas
I was here
Kim,
when
right?
Doug was here to talk about the riots. I joined for the second half of it.
So you directed that the documentary, right? Saigu.
No,
you produced it.
I was the executive producer.
The executive
I guess,
producer.
And then I hired Doug to direct it. Yeah.
How do you think he did?
Well, for
Now that
the
he's
short,
not here.
the short period of time that we were able to, do it, I think it came out fine for the time we had.
I know that
it came out great. Yeah.
You weren't really that content about it, I felt.
Well, I'm never going to be content with
Okay.
anything because anything can always be, made a lot better.
That's a really good point because in art, if you're an artist, when you're recording an album, when you're producing a film, when you're doing a talk show, when you're hosting an event, you're never completely happy with the performance that you did, especially when you review it. There's always room for improvement, and I think that's the way it goes when you're creating art or a documentary and telling a story, right? There's always something that you could improve on.
Yeah, there's always something to improve. I mean, even, at Radio Korea, I always see we can improve this, we can improve this. It's just, okay, where do we start?
You're right. Yeah, come to think of it, I think there was a term that Michael really emphasized a lot, a Japanese term called kaizen, right? Where you can always improve every single moment. You can improve here and there, right?
Right. I think
Kaizen?
I read it's
Kaizen,
like a Japanese
Yeah.
business strategy, constantly trying to improve little by little wherever you can. Yeah.
There's a very important Japanese terminology that I always go by too. It's called kao.
What is Kao is like, are you talking about?
Pride, baby.
Man,
Pride and vanity.
You really,
No, I'm kidding.
You really put me off.
All right, so Michael joins us today. He is, of course, the CEO of Radio Korea. But upon having a conversation with Michael, I began to realize that, Michael has a very deep, innate talent and also a passion for talk radio. Not only talk radio, everything that has something to do with political aspects of the world economy. There's a lot to really pick his brain on. So that's why he's joining us today.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to, it's been almost 2 months we've been doing this program, and I thought it was time to finally come on now that there's there's no guest today. So I figured, why not talk about media? Why not talk about news media? Yeah.
And by the way, while we were talking about Kaizen, I think the media industry really needs a lot of Kaizen, right? Because there's so many propaganda here and there. And I think that's where, Michael, you and I talked a lot, and with Young too, that the mainstream media became it became pretty much a propaganda machine. And you emphasized about finding the truth, talking about some news reports that are not getting enough coverage, and so forth.
Right. I think, if you look at the United States today, you'll see, we're a radio station. We also have a website, but there are thousands of radio stations, TV stations, newspapers, magazines, now the internet, unlimited, just so much content, so much news. And you would think that with all these, this multiplicity of media outlets, and you would think that there would be such a wide range of views. But the reality is even with all these media outlets, you only get a very limited set of views. And within that limited set, that's where all the debates occur. You don't see anything that goes beyond that. So, yeah.
When did you first feel that way? The media has become pretty much, an echo chamber of the same narrative. When did you feel that they're all just ganging up against us, so to speak?
I would say that probably around the time I was in high school, I started trying to figure out what was going on because things just didn't make sense. So I did spend a lot of time reading just the most random things here and there. And I think I just, like kind of picking up a bunch of different jigsaw puzzle pieces. You just pick something up here and there, and then eventually over a period of time, you kind of get to put the pieces together, and you can kind of see something, like kind of make out what the image is, it's a long process. I think it probably started when I was about 16, and took me down some paths like
the rabbit hole.
I guess.
What media outlets did you go to? Like, for instance, talk radio or
so as a
CNN?
As a young person, like when I was like, say, 12, 13, whatever, my father would, drive me to school or pick me up, and he would listen to talk radio. He would listen to 790 KABC.
Yeah, I used to listen to that a lot.
And I used to listen to Larry Elder, actually. I listened to him a lot. And I really liked him because I saw that whenever people called and try to argue with him, he would always just shut them down with his, libertarian logic, or, I think he's a Republican now, I guess.
And they're usually good at debates, right? Libertarians.
Libertarians are very good at debates, but, their world is very limited.
Agree.
So in their world of logic, yes, they're very good at debating. And so I used to listen to Larry Elder a lot. I was a libertarian. I think when I turned 18, I joined the Libertarian Party.
You actually joined the party, huh? Wow.
Yeah, and I think in 2000, that was the year that Harry Brown was running for president. I think he was a former investment advisor or something.
So you actually had not just a knowledge, but a pretty good understanding of the political system, also the political leanings and the values of wherever you lean. I mean, because I had no idea about what exactly politics was until later on in life. When I was 18, though, for some reason, I say that I'm a Republican. The thing is that when I was 18, when I turned 18, I had a choice to choose which one, and I chose the Republican Party because traditionally my parents had supported that party, right? But it turns out that my parents' upbringing kind of led me that direction too. But for you to actually have an understanding of it and study up on it, I mean, would you say that you kind of woke up to politics and the political system earlier on than other people?
I suppose I became interested earlier on, but
because listening to Larry Elder at 16, that's kind of really, I never heard.
See,
that.
I listened to talk radio too, but I didn't know what exactly they were talking about. I just kind of didn't care. It was just kind of entertaining.
So I listened to talk radio almost all my life, to be honest with you. But prior to that, when I was, when I was a college student, I watched CNN. ABC, NBC. I didn't start off
mainstream media.
Yes, mainstream media. But you started off with talk radio. That's very unique.
Right. And what was the question? I don't even remember. What was it?
No.
Oh, yeah. I got into the politics thing. Yeah. So at 18, I was like, okay, I'm going to join the Libertarian Party because I don't like the Democratic Party. I don't like the Republican Party. I thought they were, they were anti-freedom, whatever. Libertarians can be very extreme with liberty and all that. But I wouldn't say that I was aware. It's just that was a path that I had gone down. But as time went on, after 2000, then you had 9/11, you had the invasion of Iraq, you had the financial housing crisis here, then you had Occupy Wall Street, Arab Spring, Syria, Libya, Ukraine, you have Trump, and where we are today. It's what I believed when I was 18, even though I thought I knew everything and nobody else knew anything. As I got older, I realized, okay, I don't really know anything and nobody else does either. But I think now I've reached a point, I think in the last 10 years where it's like, I feel like I kind of figured out what I think is going on. And I'm pretty confident in, the way I view the world now.
But from 10 years from now, you can change again, right?
I can always change. That's the only reason I'm here, is because I never always just accepted what I was told. And I always kept myself open to new information. So anytime I got new information that went against what I believed or what I thought, I didn't think I'm going to reject that. I wanted to know more. Because to me, it's not about, I want to be the right one. I want to know, I want to be the authority. I wanted to get to the truth. Okay. So for me, it's never about trying to win for a side. It's what's the truth.
It's not a sports team thing. It's about
it's not about the Lakers or Celtics. It's just what's the truth.
But it's about the Dodgers. But
right.
one thing that I've noticed, I worked for a station that was funded partially by the government, the tourism ministry, to be exact. So when you're talking about tourism and you're talking about like the country, then you're talking about kind of like uplifting the country to a certain propaganda to show the good side of the country, right?
A little bit of pro-government, right?
Yeah. So a lot of channels in Asia I found were had propagandas that they had to serve for whether it was a government or anti-government or left-leaning or right-leaning, and that's kind of how I learned about the whole institution and how mainstream works and how the media works, right? It serves to it basically works to serve a certain propaganda, right? And it feeds the machine. And one of the things that I noticed when I came to Radio Korea is you never kind of had any kind of a request to talk this way or that way, but you always wanted to kind of show all the different sides. As you could see on 문화충격 or our Culture Shock program, you see that there's people from all different types of backgrounds that support different types of political not agendas, but parties per se. Let's put it that way.
Right. So,
what is that the direction that you're going with Radio Korea, and is that what you're looking for to show the different sides?
Okay. First of all, I don't think there's any neutral news organization out there. It doesn't exist.
No.
There's always going to be some bias. So, I have my bias, and Michael, you joined this company because you have your own bias, I feel, towards a certain direction. And, personally, I feel that, and I've said this before, I think you're always mostly wrong about things.
Oh, that's why he hired, but...
Yeah, I know. But I thought, okay, even though I think Michael's wrong about a lot of things, at the very least, I thought, okay, Michael doesn't just rely on the mainstream, and just accept it. He kind of tries to look around and see what else is going on there. So I thought, okay, even though Michael and I are complete opposites oftentimes, even though we do agree sometimes, I thought, okay, well, this is a way where, at least Radio Korea, because if you look at other Korean American outlets or any outlets, they just kind of, they translate what's in the mainstream and say, hey, this is your news.
Which is tragic, right?
Well, yeah, because again, you're not informing your audience, you're misinforming your audience. And it's better to be completely ignorant and not know anything than know the wrong information. So I felt at least what Radio Korea could do, because I think for the longest time what we had mostly been doing was kind of pushing, just because the way it's always been done is just kind of go with what's out there, what's in CNN, what's in Fox, what's in Reuters, AP, BBC, whatever, NPR, whatever. And I think I don't remember what my point was.
The BBC, NPR, these types of things, because they do report on one side of the story and don't report. They do not represent the other side of the story, I've noticed.
Yeah, it's all propaganda, bias, whatever you want to call it. But I think if you can hear propaganda or bias from many different sides, you can often kind of get a better idea of what the truth is. So I think that's kind of what Culture Shock is doing. Like we've had recently, we had people like Lawrence Peck, who's very neocon. He neocon, and then we also had Shinami, who was the Jongbuk Ajumma who went to North Korea and all this.
Like a North Korean, an honorary North Korean.
Yeah. We also had Douglas Kim, who's a communist.
Douglas Kim, who's a communist who I've known for a few years. And I know many people I know a lot of communists.
And we've also had Larry Elder too.
Larry Elder.
And I was a Larry Elder
presidential candidate.
Right. We shouldn't bash Larry Elder too much. He was
I don't bash Larry. I think he's a good guy, but I think he's wrong too. But he's a nice guy. Yeah.
I mean, Larry Elder.
We had a good dinner together.
Yeah. Larry Elder is a pioneer. I mean, he was a pioneer back in the 90s, and he woke up. I mean, Candace Owens and Ben Shapiro and Dave Rubin, all of them happened because of Larry Elder, so he's one of the leaders. But so I wanted to go back to that question. It's kind of odd because I started off watching mainstream media and then kind of watched other alternative medias, read books and watched Fox News and other stuff. In your case, you started off with talk radio. I mean, did you drive around, or how could you just start off right away? Talk radio.
Again,
talk radio is kind of far.
Again, it started because my father would listen to radio. He would listen to Dennis Prager,
Oh, okay.
who started that fake university.
PragerU.
Prager University, yeah.
That's not even a real university.
No, it's
just an
it's just some online thing.
It's
whatever.
a YouTube channel, but I kind of
But it
like
has
some of the
great-
stuff
yeah,
that's
it
on
has
there.
great stuff
I agree
there.
with some of that
But,
stuff.
Probably we disagree on that too. But anyway.
But I used to you know what I heard Dennis Prager say once when I was a kid on the radio? He's like, a lot of women have rape fantasies. And I remember hearing that as a kid. I'm like, what
Did he
what
really
does that
say-
mean?
Oh man, that's unbelievable.
No, back then,
But,
back then there were people saying that kind of stuff, you know.
But he said
was
it
really
so.
weird.
But for me as a child to hear that, I was like, wait, isn't rape that thing where this happens? And why is this guy saying a lot of women like that or fantasize about it? It just. But that's the one of the few things I remember that he said when I was like, because that really,
So he
really
said-
messed with my head.
He said it kind of matter of fact kind of way.
Yeah.
Wow.
But this was probably like 93, 94-ish. Yeah.
By the way, Dennis Prager, I don't listen to him that much. PragerU, because the way Dennis Prager would talk is very slow and very laid back. So I was never like a huge fan of his. But
yeah. Anyway, the question was.
yeah, you started off.
I
as talk
started off
radio.
listening to talk radio. I read a lot of books. Amazon started coming around, I think, in the late 90s. They would advertise on the radio too. So I used to listen to Howard Stern a lot on 97.1 KLSX. They were at the 3580 Wilshire, just in front of BCD. And that was the Howard Stern station. They syndicated the show here. And Amazon used to advertise on the Howard Stern show. You know, they say Earth's biggest bookstore, 2 million books. And I would, begin ordering from Amazon. So I got all these crazy books from Amazon that you wouldn't be able to get from your local store. And I was reading about all kinds of things. And then, and then I don't think I really got into the cable news thing until, I think, from 9/11. Yeah. From that time on, I started watching like cable
So
news.
starting from 9/11,
Yeah.
you began watching more TV news media.
Yeah.
But never
right.
a mainstream fan. I mean, not a fan, but like.
To me, I didn't really think about it that way. I was a libertarian. I just saw all the media as kind of, if it didn't fit the libertarian view, I just saw that as wrong. But my view was still like, hey, after 9/11 was like, yeah, we should go to war in Iraq and all this, and
So you bought into it.
yeah, a lot of libertarians
Building
didn't.
7.
Did you support the Iraq war back in the day?
I did, and
Everyone did.
Yeah.
Everyone
except
did.
a lot of libertarians and I think Green Party, but even Harry Brown was against it. And I remember it was like considered outrageous. I mean, you had to support that war.
How about Larry Elder? Was he supportive?
Larry Elder? I remember driving down Wilshire Boulevard, I think 2003
Did you
or
support
so, and Larry Elder was doing a live remote somewhere with a big audience, and he's like, I'm now changing to the Republican Party to support the war in Iraq. And
he
people
did
were
support
No,
the war.
everyone
Okay.
supported the war, I remember.
Yeah.
And everyone signed off on the Patriot Act, too.
Actually, a lot of Democrats supported it too back in the day.
Do you remember the Patriot Act?
I remember the Patriot Act, and libertarians were
Against it,
it because it's taking away freedom.
Yeah, but everyone signed off on it basically. Do you
Right.
think? And so that's why these weird theories started coming out about what the
I think Patriot Act was wrong. I think it was wrong.
But everyone signed off on it.
I know back then because everybody thought that the country's crumbling down.
So here's part of what I believe to be true today.
It was a media thing too. People
Is-
signing off on it, don't you think?
Well, yeah, but what I think is true today, and I could be wrong. I believe that there's this fake or reality show going on where they try to put the left against the right, Democrats and Republicans, and they try to get people to choose a side. Are you a Laker or are you a Celtic, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, though, those are not really our teams. Like they will do whatever they want, regardless of what the people want. And to me, the American politics game, whatever, it's just a show. It's not real, and I don't think I see a lot of Korean
Like a
people.
sports team analogy, right? Kind of
Yeah,
thing. Right?
it's a real.
It's like WWE.
It's fake. Yeah, it's like WWE. WWE is more real, but it's just a show. I mean, if you look at politics in other countries, like I've been to other countries and I've seen how they do their elections there. Over here, it's crazy. It's and I'm like, well, this is the land of Hollywood. This is the land
Theatrical.
of bombs and war and Hollywood, and it's very dramatic, the elections, and they spend billions of dollars on ads and everything. just to pick, one of two choices, you want, this rich person or that rich person, or this person backed by billionaires or this person backed by billionaires. Is that really a choice? Is that really democratic? I don't think so. It's not. So the American people get very invested into this this show, this political theater, and they'll even like go against their own friends and family or their spouses over political differences. But if you look at the very top level, whether Democrat or Republicans, they all get along. So, I mean, you even look at Donald Trump's wedding, the Clintons were there.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago, though, right?
Right. But even if you look at 2020, Donald Trump is still in office, right? Jeff Bezos, now owner of the Washington Post, he has a party at his Washington, D.C. mansion. Who's there? Ivanka Trump goes there. Jared Kushner goes there, along with Hollywood elites or liberals like Ben Stiller, and Bill Gates is there. So it's all a big club. George Carlin, the comedian, he said, it's all a big club, and we're not in it. Mm-hmm. So the people not at the top, they will fight each other and argue with each other about which side is worse or which side's better. But the ones at the top, they all get along. They're fine with each other.
No, but
it's kind of a little machine that they work.
But divide and conquer.
But you don't see the whole world, I'm talking about America, tilting towards the establishment Democrat side. I think like big tech or the mainstream media, other than like Elon Musk buying Twitter, and the entertainment industry, universities, they're all more pro-establishment Democrats than Republicans. I didn't see a lot of what do Republicans have? I mean, Soros, the Democrats has George Soros. The Republicans don't have that much compared to the power that Soros has. You know what I mean?
You're saying that
there's one side. It's not an even playing field.
Wait, what power does Soros have? Can you explain?
I think
understand.
I think he has a lot of influence over the Democratic elected officials on the United Senate side, and also on the congressional side, and also on the presidential side. They all got tons of money. Biden got most of his presidential campaign money from Soros people. So I'm saying that way. Yeah.
So you're
but
saying
on the Republican side, we don't see that kind of power player.
So you're saying that Democrats can be influenced and bought and paid for by money.
What I'm saying is the media is completely tilted toward the left over the right. Other than Fox News, I don't see a lot of channels.
Yeah, but
on
Fox
TV.
News is the number one channel.
It's number one.
How can you say that it's not mainstream? This is the number one channel.
It's number one by default. In a way, that's the only channel out there. But if you accumulate all the other channels, CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, and all the other, MSNBC, they outnumber Fox. So
liberal media tend to have all the terrestrial networks, and I think he's trying to point that out and saying that the Democratic Party has that kind of a backing.
Even in the entertainment
but conservatives
industry,
have always had talk radio. Mm-hmm. Fine. The liberal establishment mind, they had more of the TV media.
TV media.
But conservatives always, had been more dominant in talk radio because
in the past, I would say, but not these days.
Do you think AM radio is still dominant?
Well, I don't know of any leftist hosts on the radio right now.
Hey, let me ask you a question. When you started off, we were talking about how you were not able to see a certain. You see two different sides, but you don't see anything fringe in the middle, and you don't see a lot of that being exposed to the public. One of the things is that by natural occurrence, people tend to navigate toward or gravitate towards the news that's popular. And also, there seems to be a certain control over what news becomes popular and what doesn't.
Right.
Do you think there is some news manipulation or suppression going on?
You said that, people will gravitate to what's popular. But again, who decides what's popular?
Exactly.
It's these media conglomerates. Now, if you look, most of the media is owned by, I think, 5 or 6 conglomerates.
Yeah, 6. Yeah.
And they can all decide what the top story should be. Even to this day, I don't think as much, but especially in the past, we heard a lot about, for example, Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
For what? For what purpose? What is she? What does she do?
She sells vanity.
But they kept promoting Kim Kardashian and what's going on. Well, not just, it dumbs down America, but it also promotes
money.
A lot of spending on,
designer goods,
for the beauty industry, the fashion industry,
Yeah.
all this stuff. But
sells vanity.
Who decided that that's what should be promoted.
Was that the people? Don't you think that was the people?
No,
That's
because
what I would naturally think, right?
I feel like there are some control top.
So they're trying to control it, and then
kinda
that's
feel
what
that
I'm
way.
saying. So they're basically putting things out there more and more in the limelight, so people gravitate naturally towards it.
Well, yeah, they decide what goes out there, and they also decide what doesn't go out there. So, for example, let's see, one thing that they'll talk about, or that was pretty heavy since last year, February, I think. When Russia invaded Ukraine, like it was just constant, nonstop. Oh my God, look what Russia's doing in Ukraine.
Russia bad. Yeah.
Right, Russia bad, right?
Yeah, I think that brainwashing. It almost felt like brainwashing. They never represented Russia's side or what they were going through, but it was always all about how they're destroying freedom and they're trying to take over Ukraine.
Right, but it's not only that. What during that time? Okay, so there's so much stuff that they leave out. So when they talk about Russia invading Ukraine, February last year, I think it was, they don't talk about the 8 years prior when, first of all, the pro-Russian government was overthrown, I think in 2013 or so.
Yes.
The Euromaidan coup revolution, whatever, which the United States did have supporting influence in.
It was during Obama years, right? Yep.
2013, yeah, that was Obama.
They didn't get along, right? Obama and Putin.
I think Obama pretty much led that coup d'état, Euromaidan, and then that brought it.
Well,
to
again, I think this goes
anyway.
into the whole like thinking that Democrats and Republicans are really different. They're not, but they don't really talk about what happened after the coup, and how since then the government in Kyiv was bombing and killing people in the east of Ukraine. So there was fighting going on for the last 8 years and nobody gave a damn. And suddenly when Putin goes over, finally, all of a sudden we're supposed to care. But not only that, they don't talk about during that time there was a war in Yemen with Saudi Arabia, and that we were supporting Saudi Arabia in their war against Yemen because the I don't know how complicated this might be, but the government in Yemen, I guess, had been taken over by Houthi rebels, which are Shia Muslims, and Iran is a Shia state, whereas Saudi Arabia is a Sunni state. Most Muslims are Sunni, and most of the quote unquote terrorism, they come from Wahhabism, Sunni, Saudi Arabia, this kind of ideology. So Yemen is right beneath Saudi Arabia, and I think from that perspective, Saudi doesn't want Iranian influence right at their southern border, which is understandable. But we were supplying Saudi Arabia, and many people were dying in Yemen and being starved, and no one cared at all. How many people died? How many people suffering? No one even knew. But suddenly we're supposed to care about a bunch of blonde people with blue eyes.
The hypocrisy of the media, right?
Yeah, so it's like, what? Only European lives matter? What's going on here?
So I mean, when you're considering that what you just mentioned, what's the motive behind it in your thoughts, and what's the motive that could be, for example, for so much support or the media trying to support Ukraine in this?
I think you have to take a very wide, you have to step way back. It took me it took me a while to reach this point because I always still had this idea, as a libertarian, I was very patriotic, believed in America and everything, and the Constitution, and I had a big American flag. But I had to finally accept. I'm sorry, but you have to accept reality, whether it's good or bad, how it makes you feel. And
As it is, right? As is.
And I finally had to accept that. Okay, maybe America is not the greatest and the best. Maybe America does some bad, really bad things too.
Like economic takeover?
Like when they say Iraq was a mistake or whatever, okay, so I was like, oh, that's a mistake. But I had to accept that maybe these are not mistakes. Maybe these things were intentional.
I don't think it was a mistake.
And once I could kind of let go of the idea that America's infallible, my country, right or wrong, and I was able to say, okay, America's good when it's good, but when it's bad, I have to say that it's bad. And when I was able to see it from that perspective, world events started to make a lot more sense. And I realized, okay, Ukraine, for example, Ukraine, it's not just about Ukraine. I mean, you would have to go back in history for this. Russia, for example, it's a big country. I think it might be the largest country.
It's the largest country. Yeah.
And Russia has a history of being invaded or attacked, I think, over hundreds of years.
Germany was one of them.
Germany, most recently. Yeah, Germany, Poland, Swedes.
All NATO countries,
Napoleon.
Right? Mm-hmm.
And even the United States invaded Russia, I think, at the end of World War I.
All NATO countries, right?
I don't think Sweden's in NATO, but yeah.
More or less.
So I think Russia has always been like a target because it's so big, and empires always want to grow. Generally speaking, they like to grow and expand their power and influence. And I think especially when the Soviet Union was formed in 1918, 1990, whenever it was, around 1920, when the Soviet Union was formed, suddenly you had a bunch of communists or socialists, whatever, take over this big country. And by the end of World War II, the Soviets had done most of the heavy lifting in the war. Mm-hmm. They suffered the most casualties. And polls back then showed that the majority of people said, hey, it was the Soviets that saved the world from Nazism. Mm-hmm. Of course, as the decades went on, that changed because, the media, the messages
the narrative changed. Like
right.
America was a hero, right?
So after World War II, suddenly there was a lot of, I think there was a lot of influence, like, wow, the Soviets are heroes. And a lot of, perhaps a lot of people were like, oh, let's turn to communism. Let's turn to this kind of ideology. And I think that scared the West because, the West is capitalist. And, if you spread communist ideology, which is essentially where no private individuals can own so much, I think they were threatened by that kind of idea, especially the big industry people. So they created NATO, I think 1949, essentially to kind of maybe eventually attack the Soviet Union, or at least
keep them at bay.
Keep them at a distance. And there was a Cold War, and fortunately they didn't fight, although maybe they had proxy war in Afghanistan in the 80s.
That would be proxy. This is proxy too.
This is a proxy.
Could we also add a questionable moon landing too?
We're running against a break right now, so we'll come back.
Am I going to even remember this? Okay, all right, fine.
No, you know what? You're going to remember it because I want to mention a questionable moon landing. We're going to be back with more after this on Culture Shock.
All right.
엘리베이터 내가 잡아놨어. 빨리 다치기 전에 빨리
잠시만.
진짜 아까 그 사람 찾으면 우리 늦었어.
그니까 진짜 엘리베이터 잡아서 너무 고마워. 내가 진짜 밥 살게.
근데 나 요즘 속이 안 좋아가지고. 모르겠어.
왜 이래? 내가 도와줘줄까?
근데 면접 끝나고 이렇게 맛있는 거 먹고
시작하자고.
소화제 먹고 맛있는 거 먹죠? 조금 괜찮은 거 같기도 하고 잘 모르겠다.
Okay, we're back with Culture Shock. I'm your host, Michael Wan.
And I am Young Kim. So we left off just a little while ago talking with our CEO of Radio Korea, Michael Kim, and we were talking a little bit about that the Cold
Proxy
War that
war,
was going on between Russia or the Soviet Union and the West. So it was almost an ideological war, a war of ideologies, basically, communism versus the capitalism.
And Michael was talking about the Afghanistan war.
Yeah. So,
for example,
we were talking about the Cold War, the formation of NATO, and all this. There was a proxy war in the 80s, but moving on from that, after the Soviet Union fell, there was no more need for NATO.
Yes.
And NATO had promised they're not going to move 1 inch eastward towards
they said that.
Russia's borders. But what have they been doing? They have been moving.
Yes.
And now if they want to recruit Ukraine into joining NATO, I think that's a very reasonable thing that for Russia to consider a red line. So if Russia created a military alliance, let's say BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Let's say they created a military alliance and then they added Mexico. Would the United States government like the Russian military and Chinese military being in Tijuana?
Of course not.
Well,
of course not.
If you bring it under like East Asian
course
terms,
not.
it would be like China having to border South Korea instead of North Korea, which would be, like American or America influenced country.
So you're saying NATO pretty much intruded Russia's space, right?
Well,
That's what happened.
what's the purpose of NATO after this fall of the Soviet Union? There's no more need for NATO. And what has NATO done since then? They bombed and destroyed Yugoslavia. The cancer rates are through the roof there. They destroyed more recently Libya, Syria, and even 2003 Iraq invasion. I don't think any of this stuff was justified. First of all, they say Saddam Hussein had WMD, so we got to go in there.
That's a
and also
complete blunder,
that he was
right.
involved in 9/11 somehow.
Yes,
ridiculous. But
So I want to go back to that. 17 intelligence agencies, they all reported that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, and also MI6 from Great Britain also claimed that they had weapons of mass destruction, and that's why all from the left and the right, they all said, oh yeah, we have to attack Iraq. Somehow it was like a 9/11 thing and mixed into this. So do you believe that was by design? It was on purpose? Yeah, because when I see how the intelligence community work in this day of age about the Durham report and all that, it seems like they're evil enough to do that.
no, they lied. It's a lie. How can all these different intelligence agencies come to the same wrong conclusion that allows to go in? But again, the other thing is, about the WMD, that was used as the justification, like, oh, he's got WMD, so we got to go in there. We have a right to go in there and take him out because of WMD. Why? We have WMD.
That's true.
Only we're allowed to have it? Only what? U.S., UK, France, Germany? Only white countries are allowed to have it?
Wasn't there like a certain treaty that was signed between after the invasion of Kuwait and things like that?
So I think the legal reason why NATO attacked Iraq was because Iraq violated 17 UN resolutions, but it's BS. I think it happened way before. They were violating all the time. But why wait until 17?
Look at the results. How many millions were either killed,
it's tragic.
Injured,
Lost their limbs.
lost their homes, had to be displaced. I mean, even if you remember, like 10 years ago, like all the people fleeing and drowning in the Mediterranean, they were fleeing from Libya, North Africa, Libya to, I guess, Italy or maybe Sicily or Malta, whatever. But
It's a wrong war.
they were all dying there. These are the actual results of what NATO does.
That's tragic.
And the United States used depleted uranium in Iraq. The cancer rates have gone up. Birth defects. Why isn't this reported?
And let me just cut in there real quick, because a lot of people watching this, or some people that may have never heard of this before, might be wondering, what's going on? What is this that we're hearing about? Because a lot of people have the conception that NATO is good and that communism is bad.
I think that starts from the point where whatever America does, they're doing it right. I think that's where it starts from.
I think the thing is like, okay, number one, super American patriot level. It's like, hey, America's the best. Everything we do is good and justified. And then, you get to another place where it's like, okay, America's great and we're good, but yeah, sometimes we make some mistakes, and, that's too bad, but hey, it happens, it's just how it goes. And then beyond that, that's when you get into like, hey, these are not mistakes. These are well-planned things that happen, but you just have to look at who benefits.
Well, I think the general consensus led to the last aforementioned fact that you said. I think, especially after Iraq and after Afghanistan, more people are saying, hey, you know what? Is this just a way of using American lives to push the American agenda?
Michael, who benefits the most? I want to ask you, is it the military industrialized complex or who is it?
Well, yes. Obviously the military industrial complex does benefit. I think, what president was it? Eisenhower, I think, warned about the military-industrial complex when he was leaving office. But they benefit because all those missiles, everything they fire, like that's all American taxpayer money, right? That's all a big subsidy for them. Not only do they win, I guess...
Any like Lockheed Martin?
I think when they rebuild the countries or whatever, like that's a lot of money. Government contracts and things. And that's who benefits. I mean, who doesn't benefit is not the people of either side. I think, unfortunately, it's the regular people that pay the price of empire, while those in charge of the empire, they are the ones who benefit.
And the media is a big factor in pushing this.
Yeah, that's true.
Again, the media is owned by the same class of people.
Yeah.
It's not like, a mom and pop. It's not like, CNN is a mom and pop business. No. These are big corporations taking in billions of dollars. So they are part of the whole, part of the system. The media is part of the system, the government, it's all part of the system. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question. When you mentioned that a lot of I'm not sure if it was you or someone mentioned that a lot of South Korean media and also world media, they look to the mainstream media in the United States.
South Korea especially.
And they're basically spreading the same thing in their countries. For example, in South Korea, I think a lot of the sourcing comes from CNN and also other mainstream media. So even during the election cycle back then when it was Hillary Clinton versus Donald Trump, in Korea, it was overwhelmingly supportive. Korea was overwhelmingly supportive of Clinton and did not ever imagine, was on the same boat with almost like, I guess like 70% of Americans who all thought Trump was just going to lose in a landslide. But yet, it flipped like that, right? How dangerous is this type of behavior among media companies to source from just one side of this news story in America?
No, it's absolutely dangerous what the media does because again, it creates it helps push for war. People die, people get killed, people lose a lot of things from this. So the media is so dangerous. Like Malcolm X said that the media is the most powerful entity on earth because the media has the power to change your perception. I'm paraphrasing here. Change the perception of, whether they can make someone who's good look bad, someone who's bad look good. And if the media can control your mind like that and make you think a certain way, then what are you? You're not even a human. You're a slave. If they control your mind, are you free? If your mind is imprisoned, are you free? If everything you think and the way you live and act and the decisions you make is based on lies, are you free? Just because you can vote, does that make you free? No, it doesn't.
Are the votes even legitimate, may I ask?
Well, that's the other thing.
That's kind of something that we have to question.
I mean, the whole thing is just
a show, right?
I mean, yeah, even the machines. Why can't we have... Vegas has machines that can, figure things out and
create the odds for you.
The country can't? It doesn't make sense. And on top of that, it's not even... popular vote. It's like you gotta
electoral.
Yeah, it's and on top of that, it's like who even decides who these candidates are? Like who said in 2020 that the best person to beat Donald Trump is this guy Joe Biden? Who said in 2016 that the best possible people to run the United States is Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? These are the best. I mean, and I'm not saying that, I'm a communist or that I support China, but I look at other systems too. And I'm like, okay, well, how does China run? Like, how did Xi Jinping become the leader there? If you want to rise up in China's system, for example, man, you got to study hard. You got to have, you start off at the bottom, I think there's like 90 million people in the Communist Party in China, and you got to compete to get in there. And once you're in there, you got to compete to keep moving up. They do surveys. They find out how your job performance and everything. And by the time you get to the top, like you beat out like millions of people to get to that top.
But you're saying in America, it's more of a royal family kind of thing.
In America, if you just got money and somebody's willing to back you, it's like, hey, I'll be your leader. Who was Barack Obama before he became president?
Was a community organizer.
What does that even?
Senator, U.S. Senator.
What?
He was a community organizer.
US before
And
that,
Donald
US
Trump,
Senator,
what was he? Donald Trump's a reality TV star.
Real estate mogul.
He was also a businessman.
And he's in WWE. He used to go on Howard Stern and talk about...
There's nothing wrong about that.
Hey,
nothing wrong, but I'm saying, before he became president of the United States, what was he?
Yeah, but I don't know. Like
Ronald Reagan was an actor.
And Ronald Reagan, look at this.
I think America was always, these famous figures. There's always, under the
It's
lens.
Hollywood.
So we always see them. But China, Xi Jinping, people didn't even know about him until he became.
Ukrainian
the
president was a
there.
comedian.
Right.
So Michael, we talked about the mainstream media, 6 corporations owning 95% of the media.
Maybe
then
more than that,
how can we overcome that? Because we see in the Korean community here and also in South Korea, I would say probably 90% plus they rely on probably only CNN.
Let me
they
add
don't
on
even
to
rely
that.
on even other outlets.
Let
I think
me add on to that.
It's predominantly CNN. How can we overcome that?
Yeah, because one of the factors is that I think media is not playing the responsible role that it should in giving people the fair news and the equal representation. Obviously, we have to go searching for it ourselves if we want the truth. When you're presented with everything from the top news from the left or the top news from the right, a whole bunch of propagandized news that's in your face, how do you weed through that and find the information that you are looking for?
Like I said, you can't rely on any one news source because every source is going to be biased. And some people, especially in America, they think if they look at Fox and CNN, that's enough. Hey, I got the left, I got the right. That's not enough.
No, that's not enough.
Because that's still American.
Yeah.
And they think, okay, I'll go international. Let me check out the BBC, our number one ally, our father. No, you have to, if you want to learn about Ukraine, you want to learn about Ukraine? Okay, what does USA say? What does BBC say? Fine. What do the NATO countries say?
RT.
But what does Russia say? What does China say? What does India say? If you look at the G7 nations, they don't even make up 10% of the population. And they're all white countries with the exception of Japan. Mm-hmm. And meanwhile, BRICS is like, 40% of the world population. Ask BRICS what's going on. And I think Koreans have to, it doesn't matter what Koreans in Korea believe. Or what Americans here believe. I think at the very least, because we're here for Korean Americans, right? Radio Korea is here for Korean Americans. I think at the very least, what Radio Korea should do as a news organization is do the news in a way where we do express the wide range of views, not just American left and right, but from an internationalist perspective, like from a global perspective, how can we analyze what's going on? And my goal actually is, to turn Radio Korea into a news organization with your help, and to turn it into a news organization where our audience, the Radio Korea audience, is the most informed about not just American affairs, but global affairs. I want the Radio Korea audience to be more knowledgeable about America than American-born Americans, because the average American doesn't know jack about this country.
That would mean that Radio Korea has to be the predominant Korean news source, I would say. We have to be, right?
We have to be.
We always were. Especially in the 1992 riots. When you're talking about the riots, playing the the integral role, the control top. That's what I think our role has to be here in this day and age, where everyone is misinformed. We have all these people voting for politicians because of a certain color that they represent or for a certain team that they're from, without looking at what they're trying to pass and without looking at what exactly their real motives are.
Yeah, and it's kind of scary. I mean, Michael, you touched upon the war between Ukraine and Russia, and that it actually happened way back 8 years prior to that. And I'm wondering how many percentage of Americans would actually know about this. I think it's less than 1%, to be honest with you.
I give American people a little more credit than that, maybe 5%.
You think so?
Yeah.
Okay. Probably.
I don't think 1%
How
is a
about
bit
in Korea?
extreme. Maybe 10% even.
Have you ever seen those Jimmy Kimmel
you're-
shows
so you're
where they
kinda-
ask Americans about geography and stuff? Hey, where's Kansas? And where they point? Have you
that's
seen
like
that?
Jay Leno's Street Sound, yeah.
Yeah, have you seen
But that all started with Howard Stern. He used to go around asking people.
Well,
those
whatever the
questions.
case, have you seen those answers?
I've seen
Some
those.
of the
yeah,
answers that these people are giving out?
No, I see them on TikTok, Instagram.
Pray for America, please.
Geography is one of my strong suits, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's the other
he was
thing.
quizzing me, and I was like, I don't know.
No, that's the thing is if you can study like a map and see where all these different countries are, and when you start hearing about the news, it starts to make sense because you can visualize everything. Like, U.S. went into Afghanistan, they went into Iraq. Well, what's right between them? Iran.
Mm-hmm. But most Americans, it seems like, I wouldn't say most. I think, I shouldn't have said 1%. But yeah, but that's demeaning, right?
Most Americans are clueless,
But
that's not their fault. Most Americans, okay, I say most Americans are clueless.
But I just want to say, I'm American too, though.
Yeah, and I'm American
I'm
too.
yeah, but
I
just
mean,
saying-
you're not-
my
just
passport
saying,
is-
I'm
You
just
can't say
saying
that. No, I'm
most.
just kidding.
I'm just saying most Americans, they have a world point of view that America is in the middle of the world. You
It's
know,
true,
so they
though.
feel like the whole world is operated under the language English, right? So it's like
Well, it's the American
so I
bubble.
think a lot of them feel like why do I have to know the whole thing?
Well, all
there are many
Americans-
people who don't even leave their states. By the way.
And there's a lot of people, Americans, that don't know cricket.
Yeah, Americans are clueless about what's going on, but I don't think it's easy to just say Americans are stupid. But
we're not saying that. Yeah,
No,
they're just.
but-
I think they're just misinformed
I know,
and
but
disinformed
what I'm
by
saying
the
is-
media.
me, okay, why am I CEO here? Did I beat a bunch of other people competing for this job? No, I'm here because of nepotism, I'm here because the former CEO retired and I'm the son, so I'm here to take over, right?
That happens in a lot of American
No, I
companies,
know, I'm saying, right? But because I come from a privileged background compared to most people, I had the time
to think.
and
that's
listen to the radio
well, that's
and buy books and learn and travel and have all these different experiences that brought me to
Yeah.
this point. The average American is just trying to survive. They can, they're financially insecure. They're worried about their rent, or if I get sick, then I might end up on the streets because I don't have adequate health coverage or whatever. Like, that's how the average American lives. I think they're just surviving. They're having a difficult time, and they're not thinking about, what's the political reality? It's not that's nothing to them. They're just like, how do I get by? So American people don't have time to learn about this, because if you're an American person, you just come home from work and you're watching TV. What's the easiest thing to do? Turn on CNN, turn on Fox, turn on one of these cable news networks, and just sit in front of that screen and just absorb that all, and then you're like, okay, that's all I know. So what else can I believe? That's all I've had. So it takes, you need the time, and it takes time to learn all this
So
stuff.
the importance of alternative media is rising, and I think people relying on other media sources are rising. I had a friend of mine. He complained, why do I have to read like 15 plus articles to find out the truth? Because he saw all the reports being wrong about
Because you can't
certain
handle the
issues.
truth.
And I think that really tells what kind of state we're living in right now. Because
You're absolutely right.
I also don't believe ABC, NBC, CBS, and CNN. Definitely, I don't believe them. And Fox too. Fox has been cutting off Tucker Carlson. I thought, who was kind of trying to tell his anyway more than other hosts on Fox, and they got rid of him. So I can see that there's a like a powerful force behind the scene where they don't want these things to be talked about, especially about Ukraine. Tucker Carlson, going against the Ukraine
whatever
war.
threatens the big business and power interests in this country is not allowed. Even Fox. If you look at Fox, one of their top advertisers is BlackRock,
Yeah,
the big investment firm,
15% they own.
whose CEO is obviously a billionaire, but guess what? He's also a Democrat, but he puts all that money into Fox. So again, at that top level, again, it's not about parties or anything. They're all on the same side. And Tucker, I don't know, maybe he went a little too deep into something, although Tucker would say many crazy things too. The way that many Democrats or liberals are obsessed, unhealthily obsessed with Russian conspiracies.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think
the Russia
Republicans and the American right are very obsessed with like conspiracies about China, but at the end of the day, the deep state or whatever you want to call it, both China and Russia are in the crosshairs of this so-called deep state.
We talked about a lot of truth today, I think. I actually got a lot more truth out of today's interview than I was expecting. But, we come from, when you look at the history of journalism and the history of media, mass media, it starts with newspapers and then it moves on over to radio and then TV and then YouTube and then social media and then where we're at right now. Are you guys worried about what the next generation and the new wave of media sources are going to be? I mean, because now there's AI that's going to be put into the mix and we're going to get a lot of information that may not be credible. And you're going to have to question everything now, even sound bites, even quotes, even people speaking, even people singing, even art, everything that comes out.
Because Vice has been bought by
even the fake story of the BTS guy or whatever, the guy who wanted to look like BTS. Right? It was a fake story. Apparently it was like AI or something. We talked
about it, man. Why did we even talk about it?
Because it was fake. I said it was fake.
You're right. Yeah. So, Michael, what do you think about the future of the media? The young people, would they be able to consume more truth rather than distorted truth?
I mean, it's already horrible as it is. So, I mean, can it really get that much worse? I mean, and young people don't really consume, I think, traditional media anyway. So, I think that's one of the reasons why they went after TikTok because. Just like a few years ago, they went after Huawei. And I think a lot of American business won't be able to compete with Chinese business much longer. And TikTok was taking all the ad revenue away from Instagram and Google, whatever.
So it had nothing to do with information gathering.
Well, information gathering, Facebook and Google are already doing that, and they give it to the government. The difference is TikTok doesn't give it to the government. At least not to the U.S. government. So that's what pisses off the U.S. government is like, hey, right. Facebook gives us data. Why don't you? And so they just say, hey, you're giving it to China. But all the young American people are on TikTok. And if you look on TikTok, there's a lot of videos they make that can be very critical of U.S. policy. A lot of stuff that might get more taken down on American social media. So I think that's one of the reasons why they go after TikTok. And I don't know what's going to happen next. The way I see it, American society is kind of crumbling and decaying all around us. I don't think any Republican or especially not a Democrat, they can't fix this. Yeah. You cannot fix this without serious structural change. You got to get down into the roots and just tear things away and rebuild and redo certain things because what we do now is we try to put a Band-Aid on something that requires surgery or something,
So in the serious age of disinformation, one suggestion may be to keep it tuned to Radio Korea because we're going to do our best to give the information that our Korean American audience definitely
needs. Radio Korea is going to be Radio Korea. We are dedicated to and I'm promoting Radio Korea here. We're dedicated to getting the truth out there, to having all kinds of views. I've seen some of the comments when people that are not conservative appear on here. A lot of people leave angry comments like
Shinami when she came here,
a lot of
or Douglas.
I mean, some people they're just so stop. I'm asking Korean people, please stop. Don't get too invested into this American. Sorry, that's my.
She didn't get it.
Don't get too involved into this American politics game. We as Korean Americans, I think we should just take more of an observer stance, just kind of observe what's going on in America, not try to pick sides and be a part of it. We're not part of it, okay? During the 92 riots, when we were being attacked, did they help us? No. In fact, they blamed us.
But we should vote, though, don't you think?
Personally, I don't vote.
Okay.
The only time I voted was for a local last year for
Michael,
David.
But don't you kind of think increasing the number of truth seekers, that would change the world little by little, right?
Increasing number of truth seekers, sure. It's just the problem is what's the alternative media they're looking at to get that truth. Yeah. But I can assure that to our audience, no matter where you are, left or right or whatever, Radio Korea is going to do our best to bring you the widest possible range of views and to make it so that you are the most informed out of the American population. Our audience is going to be the most informed. We're going to know.
That's why we were hired, and that's why Culture Shock is here. Michael, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
We had some deep talk today. Yeah, that's it for Culture Shock today. I'm your host, Michael Wan, News Director for Radio Korea.
And I am Content Director Young Kim. You can always catch our program on Pacific Time, 7 to 8 p.m. and also 10 to 11 p.m. on Eastern Time. And also follow us on our YouTube page. Subscribe, like and
bell.
hit that alarm button. We'll see you guys back here again.